So alright team, let's begin with the session. Let me tell you about myself first. I'm Raman and I have over 11 years of experience in software testing itself. I used to work as a test manager with one of the company in India in Gurgaon. And right now I'm completely into trainings. I've been into Selenium for more than 4 years since the time people used to work in the on the very first version of Selenium RC, and Webdriver was not even launched in the market. And I have trained a lot of people in Selenium. I have provided corporate trainings on Selenium to various organizations in India, outside India, in US, in New York, in Seattle, and I have my own institute as well in India itself, where I conduct face-to-face trainings. So that's all about me, the complete experiences in software testing itself. So before we get started with the training, I would like to tell you about this GoToWebinar session. So all the trainings that we are going to conduct, there would be around 10 to 11 sessions in which we'll be covering the entire WebDriver API and the framework designing part. I'll be touching some part on the Appium mobile automation testing as well, in which I'll be showing you how we can configure and run our test on Android as well as on iOS device. So I'll be taking both Mac as well as on Windows example, but initially our focus will be on WebDriver, because WebDriver, like in Appium as well, most of the methods that we use will be of WebDriver itself. So all sessions will be recorded, and after the training I'll be uploading the recording of the same session, and I'll be forwarding it to each and every one of you. I mean, every one of you must have access to the video tutorials as well, right? So if you want to refer the stuff from video tutorials, you can refer it from there. Otherwise, I'm going to forward you the recorded sessions as well, whatever that we're going to discuss. So these will be interactive sessions, and I want that if you guys have any queries, you can unmute yourself and you can ask it there and then. Or there is a chat box as well over here where you can add your questions. You can ask questions like personally to me as well as to the group as well, right? So that's about the webinar session. So before we get started, if you guys have any queries, any one of you have any queries regarding the training, regarding what all we will be covering, so you can unmute yourself and you can ask it. Or even if you don't want to talk, then you can add a question to the question box, and I'll be able to I'll be replying on the same. So any question, anyone?
Hey, Raman, this is Subha. So I have a question. When you were trying to teach about Appium, will you please cover for native apps also?
Yeah, sure. I'll be covering native apps.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Any question? All right. So there are still some people, I have actually muted them because there was some background noise coming. So guys, if you want that I should unmute you, you can just add it, just send me on the chat box so that I can unmute you and you can mute yourself on your own. Any more questions, guys, before we get started with our first session? All right, Abhishek, I'll unmute you. Okay. So now you can talk if you want. Else you can mute yourself on your own. All right. Any more questions, guys? All right. So let's start with the session now. So every session that we're going to cover will be somewhere around 1.5 hours is the minimum duration of our session. It could go up to up to 2 hours depending on what topics that we are going to discuss, right? Our major focus will be on the WebDriver API and the framework designing part. And in these sessions, I will be majorly covering the coding part, right? I'm not going to cover any configuration related to, let's say, I'm not going to cover the very basic core Java topics, right? Because if we start discussing about core Java in these sessions, then it will going to take at least 8 to 10 sessions specifically on Java itself. So our major focus will be on WebDriver API. Java tutorials I've already added in the course if you want to brush up your Java skills, because very basic Java is required for Selenium. You need not to know any advanced Java for Selenium. It's only the basic programming concepts like if, else, loops, arrays, OOPS concept, and encapsulation. All these concepts I will be picking up within the Selenium example itself, within the WebDriver example itself, right? So my majorly focus will be on the WebDriver API, and we will be covering two frameworks. One is data-driven framework entirely, and the second one is the hybrid framework, that is page object model. So we will be covering these two frameworks, and the later part of our sessions will focus on the mobile automation testing. So I'm going to show you how we can automate native apps on Android device as well as on the iOS device. So I'll be telling you the complete configuration of Appium for Android as well as for iOS on Windows and Mac both. So these are the things that we're going to cover in our 10 to 11 sessions, right? So if anyone have any questions in this, you can ask it right now. I'll be starting with very basics of WebDriver today. Okay, what is meant by native app? So native app, if we are talking about a mobile device, we have three types of apps over there. One is a native app, second one is hybrid app, and the third one is web app. Initially, up till the current version of Selenium, it supports only the web app testing. It does not support native app and the hybrid app testing, right? What are native app, what are hybrid app, what are web apps? Native apps are basically a standalone app. So let's say you open up your Android device and you make a call. So that dialer app is a standalone app that is installed on your mobile device. We can take another example, let's say a calculator app. That is again a standalone app that does not require any internet connection to open up the calculator. There is no web view inside it, right? So that are called as native apps. Web app is the one that you open through a browser, through a Chrome browser on your mobile device, through the default browser of your Android. You open up any website. Those we call as web apps. Hybrid app is a combination of native plus web app. So any app that has web view inside it, so we call them as a hybrid app. So these apps require internet connectivity. Without internet, these app does not open. So with the latest version, with the upcoming version of Selenium, there are some APIs that are going to interact with, like integrate with Selenium, that is Appium, Selendroid, and iOS driver. So these are some of the APIs which these days many companies have started using in order to automate these three types of apps. for mobile automation testing. Initially, Selenium was designed for web-based only. So in our today's session, I will be covering the introductory part of Selenium, how Selenium came into the market, what is the history behind it. I know that there are some people in the group who might have a bit understanding of WebDriver and might be aware of the history of Selenium, right? But I want that, there are some people in the group who are very new to Selenium. So I'll be maintaining the same pace, right? I'll bring them to the same level, and then we'll move on to the advanced topics, right? So initially, if you have knowledge in Selenium, so I want that please bear with me for at least 1 or 2 sessions, then we'll pick up the advanced topics, because I want everyone should be at the same level, right? Any questions? Anyone want to ask any questions? There are still some people on mute, like I have muted them. If you want, I can unmute you and you can mute yourself. Just type it in the question box and I'll unmute yourself. Flipkart on the mobile device is not a hybrid app, because most of the elements on that app are the native elements, right? So all those elements are easily locatable by one of the tool. If you might have heard about UI Automator Viewer, right? So through that we can like easily inspect all these elements, and it's a standalone app. Although it runs through internet, right? If internet is not there, it will not gonna work. But there is no web elements, like web-based component in that app. So all the components are like native components itself. I'm gonna show you a couple of apps, then you may be more clear about the difference in the hybrid and native app. Hybrid app, basically, the view is something like a browser. There are HTML components in that app. All right. So the other thing, guys, if you are asking any question, then you can even press the button send to all, so that everyone else in the group should be able to see that. If you press send privately, then only I'll be able to see the question. So if you specifically want that only I should see the question, then send it privately. Else you can press send to all, so that everyone else in the group should be able to see the question. An example for hybrid app, I have already added one of the example in the Appium tutorials. I think you may have seen that or not. I'm not sure. There's a app called Burger King app that has some web views inside it. So that app is basically an hybrid app. So I've covered all these 3 types of app in the Appium tutorials itself. All right. Any more questions, guys? All right. So before we get started with Selenium, the very first thing we should be understanding what exactly is Selenium. What is Selenium? So when I ask this question, to most of the people, I generally get an answer that Selenium is an automation testing tool. It's an open source automation testing tool, right? Open source tool. It covers, there are many components in Selenium like IDE, RC, WebDriver, Grid, and so on, right? And it supports multiple browsers, supports multiple languages, supports multiple platforms, like it's platform independent, right? These are some of the answers that I generally get from the people when I ask what exactly is Selenium. If you may have seen my initial introductory video, right, a video tutorial, you might be knowing that what exactly is Selenium. Selenium is actually not a tool. It's not a tool like QTP, Windrunner, and other automation tools in the market, where we get a exe file, we double click on it, it installs on our machine, provide us some platform where we can do record and play, where we can do some scripting, right? It's nothing like that with Selenium. Selenium is not a tool. It's basically an API or a set of APIs, right? Now, what exactly is API? API stands for Application Programming Interface. Now, that's a full form. What is an application programming interface? What is inside application programming interface? So let's take this example first. It's very important to understand what is an API before we start working on Selenium. So I'll be taking this with a very practical example. You might have seen this example in my initial introductory video as well. If you have not, then I'll be explaining it right now, right? So let's say I'm a Java developer and I worked with some company called xyz.com, right? So here I work as a Java developer. I got a task that I need to design a calculator. So in order to design a calculator, there are various functionalities available in a calculator. I can add something, I can subtract something, I can multiply something, I can divide something, and so on. There are a lot of functionalities available. And all these functionalities I actually need to code inside my Java project, right? So what I'll be doing, I'll be creating a class with the name calculator in my Java project. Now I believe everyone should be aware of what a class is. If you, I believe if you are from the testing background, you must have studied sometime C, C++, or maybe core Java, and you must be aware of what a calculator, what a class is and what an objects are. Although you might have not practically worked on it, because in testing, most of the time we don't get any chance to do any development, right? So we don't get a chance to write code. So, but theoretically, you must be aware of what a class is. If you are not aware, then I would request you that just go through the initial Java tutorials and just brush up the Java basic concepts, and then you should start with Selenium, right? So I will be creating a class with the name calculator, and within this class, I will be creating various functions, each function for each functionality. Function as in, I'll create a function called add. Now in this function, I will be adding some code that could add to some numbers, right? Same way, I'll create a function called subtract, and we'll write some code that should actually subtract some numbers. Then a function called multiplication, a function called division, and so on. So on, I'll be implementing the entire functionality. I'll keep on adding all the functions that are required in a calculator program, and I'll be writing a specific code inside all these functions, right? If we are working on Java, we don't call these things as functions. If you're working on C++, C#, then we call these things as functions. In Java, we call these things as methods, right? So in a class, I can have n number of methods inside a class. Now, what is the syntax of calling a method from a class? Let's say I want to call the addition method from this class. So what is the syntax? I will be writing something called as calculator calc equal to new calculator, right? This is how I create an object of the class, right? Now a question to you guys, what is an object inside this statement? What is an object? So guys, I want these sessions should be really interactive. I don't want that only I should be speaking in the entire sessions. I really want it to be interactive, so you guys can answer these questions. So what is an object in this?
Calc is the object.
Calc is an object.
Calc.
All right. All right. Okay. Calc.
Hi Raman, actually new calculator is the object, calc is the reference variable.
Exactly. Exactly. So most of the time, I mean, when I ask this question in my institute as well, most of the time I get an answer that calc is an object. This is not an object. New calculator is an object, right? How this is an object, I can prove you this thing with like when we start doing some coding. So I'm gonna prove you this thing. So this is an object. Let's say if we are talking about Java programming, initially people used to write the Java code in Notepad, right? Initially, when there were no editors, people used to write the Java code in Notepad and then they compile that and then they execute it, right? Now these days there are many editors available in the market. Editors like NetBeans is there, IntelliJ is there, Eclipse is there. Eclipse is one of the most popular editor for Java, right? And it's completely open source too, right? So we'll be creating all the Java project, all the Selenium code in Eclipse itself. We'll be using Eclipse for the training itself, right? So before I proceed to this example, I'll first do the basic configuration of how we can get Java installed on our machine and how we can download the editor Eclipse, right? So what we're going to do, the very first thing, this is actually a prerequisite for Selenium as well. We need to have Java on our machine. We need to have Eclipse as an editor where we can write the Java code, and then we need to download Selenium. So what is Selenium and how we can download it, we'll talk about it later on. First, we'll start with Java. Java as in we will be downloading JDK. And I would recommend that if you're starting with Java, download JDK 1.7 instead of downloading the latest version, because JDK 1.7 is the most stable version. And all the Appium and Selenium, everything supports JDK 1.7. If you have already installed Java and if the version is less than JDK 1.7, then Appium might not work on your machine because Appium requires anything above JDK 1.7. So how you can get it? You can go to Google and just type download JDK 1.7. Right, and this is the very first link. So Java is from Oracle, and go over here, accept the license. Now based on your Windows configuration, Java is supported on almost every platform, right? Linux, Mac, Solaris, Windows, right? Based on your Windows configuration, I'm on Windows 64-bit, so I'll be downloading this exe file. Installing Java is very simple. It's like you're installing a normal software. You double click on the exe file and the Java will be installed on your machine. Once the Java is installed, you're going to get a folder something like this. C drive, C drive. Inside the program file, you're going to get a folder of Java like this. You're going to get these two folders, JDK and JRE. JDK is Java Development Kit, JRE is Java Runtime Environment. Now what are these two? I've already covered in the Java sessions about the definition of these two. We will be firstly focusing on how we can configure the environment variables for JDK. So the very first thing we'll be doing is we'll be copying this part and we'll go to edit. We'll write edit in the start box and we'll click on edit system environment variables. If this thing does not shows up on your machine, then what you need to do, right click, go to your computer, right click, click on properties. And here you need to click on advanced system settings. So this is your environment variables. Just click on this and create a new variable with the name Java underscore home. Okay, these are the mandate, Abhishek, these are the mandatory Java environment variables that we need to set up. There are many other programs, many other APIs that will be that will be communicating to your Java environment. So that is the reason we would be needing, we actually need these environment variables to set up. Right? If you don't set up these variables, then still the Java is already installed. But there are many other things that might not work if these environment variables are not configured. Because those things, those APIs will be communicating with your Java code through these system variables. Right? So I'll just be pasting the path of Java home over here. And I'll click on OK. Right. Once I'll click on OK, then you'll see Java underscore home over here. Right. The next thing that you should be doing is go to the path variable and click on edit. At the very end, put a semicolon and just type %Java underscore home %/bin. Now bin is you are giving the path to the bin folder. This is the path, right? Once you give the path to the bin folder, once you press OK, like I have already done it earlier, and you need to be very careful when you are configuring this environment variable. When you are configuring these environment variables, if you make any mistake, then you might you might break any existing running program, right? So just be very careful. At the very end, put a semicolon and then type %Java underscore home %/bin and press OK. Once you are done with this, click on OK, and open up command prompt and just type Java -version. Press enter and it will show you the current version of Java on your machine. Right? So this is how we configure Java. Guys, just 1 second. I'm actually getting a call from a student. I think I missed to send him today's invite for the session. So just give me a moment. Let me talk to him and I'll join back in a minute. All right, guys. Really sorry. I just forgot to send the meeting invite to one of the students. All right. So we have just seen how we can configure Java. So this was the very initial step before we get started with Selenium, because even Eclipse will not going to open up till the time you don't have Java on your machine, right? So once we have downloaded, installed Java, the next thing we will be doing is we will be downloading Eclipse. Eclipse is completely open source, like Java is open source, right? So we'll be typing in Google download Eclipse. Which version of Eclipse to download? We'll click on the very first link and it will take us to the Eclipse website. So we will be downloading the very basic version, Eclipse IDE for Java EE developer. You can see Eclipse is used for many other languages as well, for PHP, C, C++, even for Python, right? So, but we will be using Eclipse for Java only. We'll be downloading the very basic version. Based on your Windows configuration, again, you need to download it. Like I have 64-bit, I've downloaded this version. Once you download it, it will gonna come like this, inside C drive, software, Eclipse, and this is the folder that you'll get. Like once you extract the zip file, you get a folder Eclipse, and these are the files that you'll see inside Eclipse. Now there is nothing installable in Eclipse. You just get a exe file, double click on the same, and it will launch your Eclipse. So very first thing, when Eclipse is launched, it will ask you for a workspace. Now workspace is a location where you will be maintaining your entire project code. Each and every single piece of code that you will be writing will be maintained at some one location in your hard disk, and that is what the location we call as a workspace. So next time when you again want to refer the same project, you can again select the same workspace and it will bring up your Java project. Right. Now I will be giving this workspace name with our batch name. So I'll call our batch as batch 22nd March online. Right. So this will be your workspace throughout your training. Each and every code that we will be writing will get stored inside it, and I'll be forwarding you the entire code at the end of the session. I'll be mailing it to you all. Right. So I'll click on OK and it will launch Eclipse. So within few seconds, it will take few seconds to launch the Eclipse. So once the Eclipse is launched, it will show you a welcome screen. Just close this welcome screen and this is your Eclipse. So here, this is your project explorer. You will be maintaining your project hierarchy over here, and this is basically you will be writing your code over here. This is where you will be getting the console output of the code that you'll write, right? And this is a run button. When you write the Java code, you need to hit this run button for the execution, right? So I'll be talking about different features of Eclipse later on, right? So since like we were discussing about the API, and I said that I got a task in one of the organization to design a calculator. So I'll be creating a new project over here. I'll say new project. I'll click on this project and I'll click Java project, right? And I'll click on next. I'll select Java project and then click on next. And here I can give any name to this project. So name like calculator project, right? And I'll click on finish. Click on yes. And the project is added over here, right? Since we are working on Eclipse, all the Java JRE libraries are by default added over here. Initially, when we used to work on Notepad, then we need to manually add all the Java libraries. Like we need to write include java.util.star, include other libraries, right? Like we used to work with C++, we used to write include conio.h, include studio.h, right? So we need not to write all these things over here. Eclipse, like when we create a Java project, Eclipse will automatically import all the Java libraries, right? So very first thing we would be doing is we need to create a new class where we can write some code. I'll right click over here and I'll say new and I'll click on class. And here I'll be giving some class name. So since I'm working on calculator, I'll give a class name as calculator. And I'll check this public static void main. Now what is this public static void main? Anything that we actually need to execute in Java in that any code, any piece of code that you want to execute should be present inside the main method. This main method is for execution, right? Although people who have already worked on Selenium, you might not have used this main method. You might be using some annotations, but we have not yet studied about some of the Java frameworks like Testng and JUnit. So that is the only reason we are actually starting with the main method for this time, right? Later on, we will not be using this main method. Now, what is public? What is static? What is void? Don't worry about this right now. Just treat this thing as a main method, a main function that is used for execution. If you want to understand the concept of public, static, then I would recommend just go through the Java tutorials. And if still you are not able to understand, then you can get in touch with me personally. You can ask me queries over the email, and I'm gonna revert you back on the same, right? So I'll just increase the font size. Right, and the very first statement, how we print in Java, like the very first statement is to print something in Java. Printing as in like if I want to print hello world, how we used to print in C, we used to write printf. In C++, we used to write cout. In Java, we write system.out.println, right? And within the brackets, within the double quotes, I'll say hello world, right? This is how we will be printing it. And if you want to execute it, just save this and click on the run button. As soon as I click on the run button, it will print hello world over here. This is how we actually print hello world, right? So, but we are not here to print hello world. We are actually here to design calculator and to understand what the API is. So I'll be removing this thing from here, right? Now in a calculator, we have various methods available. I will be implementing all these methods over here. So I'll write public void add. This is the very first method that I'll implement, and I'll just gonna write, print something. Let's say adding 2 numbers, something like this, right? I'll create another method that says public void subtract, and within this I'll write a code for subtracting 2 numbers. I'll add one more method, public void let's say divide, and I'll say dividing some numbers, right? So let's implement these 3 methods, these 3 functions only for the timing, right? And how we call this addition method, the very first thing we need to do is to create an object of the calculator class. So how we can create an object of this class? I'll just copy the class name. I'll go over here in the main method. I'll write calculator calc. So instead of calc, I can even write ABCD or XYZ, anything I can write, right? This is just a variable. I can say calc equal to new calculator, and the object will be created, right? Now using this reference variable, if I want to write, if I just say CLC dot, I'm gonna see all the methods inside this class. Now apart from addition method, division method, and subtraction method, you see many other methods as well. So even you can see the class name over here, calculator class, object class. Now object is actually a super class. We also call it as mother of all classes, right? What is object? We're going to talk about it later on, but whatever class that we have designed, we are able to see all the methods of that class when we just write CLC dot, right? Now if I want to call addition method, I'll say CLC dot add. I'll just save this, run this, and it will execute adding 2 numbers. Same way, I can say CLC dot subtract, CLC dot divide, and it should execute the code that is actually written inside all these methods, right? Now same way, like the way we have these methods, we have one of the method that has a same name as of the class name. So I can write it something like this: public calculator, without any return type, without void or without any other return type, right? There is a method that has the same name as of the class name. We call this thing as a constructor. It is not actually a method. It looks like a method, but it is not a method. Even we have a code, we write code inside this constructor like the way we write it in methods, right? I can even write it over here, system.out.println calling constructor. Now what are constructors? Constructors have same name as of the class name. It is used to initialize objects. It is called automatically as soon as you create an object of a class. So it means that let's say you have called addition method over here. You have called subtraction method, division method. If you want to call this method, calculator method, how will you call it? Will you write clc.calculator? You're not going to get it because this is not a method. Then how you will call it? If you don't write anything, if you don't call any method, if you just write the very first statement, if you just create an object of a class and you click on the run button, the very first thing that will be called is the constructor from this class. Whenever we create an object, right? Now we were discussing about what exactly is an object. Now let's say if I remove this statement from here, still it's a valid code. Still it's a valid code. But when I run this, will the object be created or not? See, nothing executed. So if the object is already been created, then it should have printed the constructor value, whatever that was written inside the constructor. Because a constructor is only called whenever an object is created. It means the object is not created. It's just a reference variable. Now, what if I just write this statement? And when I run this, let's see if the constructor is called or not. See, a constructor is called. It means this is an object. CLC was not an object. New calculator, whenever we write new keyword and take the class name, then only the object is created. Then why we need that CLC? If the object is created by just saying new calculator, why we need CLC, calculator CLC equal to new calculator? Why we need the reference variable? Now what if we don't have reference variable? How we call methods from a class? We'll be able to call the addition method from the class. Yes, we should still be able to call the addition method. How? I'll just write new calculator dot add and I'm able to call the addition method. See, if I run this, it will say calling constructor adding two numbers. I'm able to call the addition method, right? Now what if I want to call the subtraction method? How will I call it? I again need to write new calculator dot subtract. Again, if I want to call division, I'll again say new calculator. So whatever methods I need to call from the class, I need to write it like this way. Now if I run this, you will see that constructor is called 3 times. It means 3 objects are created inside the memory. And each method is referring to an individual object. Right? We don't want this thing. We want that only one object should be created inside a memory and all the methods should point to that particular object only. We don't want to create objects with every method. So what we have done, we have removed all these things from here and we have stored the address of this object inside some reference variable, inside some variable, and we can give any name to this variable. I've given ABCD equal to this. Now this object should have some data type. This reference variable should have some data type. Like if you're talking about a value called 100. If I want to store it inside some variable, I can say x equal to 100, right? And what would be the data type of this x? It should always be int. It cannot be string. It cannot be char, right? Otherwise it will throw an error, because this is a numeric value. See, if I'm doing a mouse over, it says that change the type of x to int. So it can only be int. Same way, if we have some values inside double quotes, if I want to store this value, I'll say value equal to this. I cannot store it inside int. I can only store this value inside a string, right? Because this is a string type of value. Same way, if I want to store this variable, if I want to store the address of this object, I cannot store it inside int or cannot store it inside string. When you do a mouse over on this, it will say that to change the type of ABCD to calculator type. So if I change it to calculator, you can see the errors are gone. Even if you are talking about string, string is also a class in Java. See, if I mouse over onto string, it is showing the definition of string. And string is actually a class. How it is a class? If it is a class, then it is a reference variable. Then value is a reference variable. It means when I type value dot, I should be able to see all the methods inside the string class. See, all the methods, these belongs to string class. So it means string is also a class in Java, right? So this is why the reference variable is required. So now using this reference variable, you can call any method from this class, and all the methods will be pointing to one single object only. It will not be pointing to different objects. Object is created only once, and rest methods will be pointing to this object, right? So this is how an object is created, and new calculator is an object, right? So now let's say I have completed the entire calculator project, right? Now I want to submit this project to my organization, right? How will I submit it? I'll just right click on this calculator project and go to export. I'll select this folder Java. I'll click on jar file. Then I'll click on next, and I may uncheck all these things, right? And just go to browse, go to desktop, and give it a name as calculator, some version, let's say 1.0.jar, and just save this and finish it, right? Once I'll click on finish, let's go to the desktop folder. So I'll go to desktop, and let's see, this is calculator 1.0.jar that's been created. Now it's nothing like if I double click on it, it will install calculator on my machine. It's nothing like that. This jar file contains only the information of what all classes, what all methods, what all functionality that I have implemented in my Java project. It just contains the information of all these classes. I can access all the classes and all the methods from this single jar file, right? So now let's say I left this organization. I left xyz.com and I joined some, let's say, Royal Bank of Scotland, right? I joined this bank. And here again I joined as a Java developer, right? So now they already have some project. It was a Java project itself. There was a banking project that they were working on, right? So again, I'll be creating a new Java project. So I'll say a new Java project and say RBS banking project. Now I got a chance to work inside this project, and in this project they have already created one class with the name banking, right? And within this class there were functionality like public void profit, something like this, public void loss, and so on, right? They hired me to implement some functionality that can add salaries for n number of employees, right? So something like I need to create a method called public void add inside this project, something like this. Now if I talk about the functionality of addition, this is similar to what I have actually implemented in my previous organization. The functionality is almost similar. The code is almost similar. Now there are two ways I can implement this functionality. Either I can write the entire code again inside this addition method in the banking class. Maybe I have written 10,000 lines of code inside that functionality in my previous organization. If I want to implement the same functionality over here, I will be implementing the entire 10,000 lines of code again. This is one way of doing it. The second way is that I actually have the jar file of my previous project. That is a calculator jar. So what I can do, I'll right click on this project. I'll go to build path, click on add external archives, and I'll select that particular jar file. And then I'll click on open. So as soon as I hit open, that particular jar file will be added as a reference library to my project. And if I expand this library, you'll see whatever classes, whatever class, whatever methods, constructor, whatever that we have created inside that particular project is now been referred inside this project. Now what I can directly do, I can directly create an object of the calculator class. Since I got the access of calculator, I can directly say calculator calc equal to new calculator, something like this. And within the addition method, I can say calc dot add, right? So in this way, I need not to write the entire code that was written inside the calculator project. And if I go to the main method, if I want to call the addition method of banking class, I'll be creating an object of the banking class by saying banking b equal to new banking, and then I'll say b dot add. That is all I need to do. And as soon as I run this, you can see adding two numbers has been executed. So the code that was written inside the calculator project, I've actually referred that code inside this project, and I've actually taken the entire functionality of addition method inside this project. Now if we talk about this calculator jar, this jar actually acts as an API to the RBS banking project. This is what an API is. API is nothing we can install on our machine. It is not like an executable file. It's actually the Java archive. If you're working on Java, then we get jar files in a form of API. If you're working on C++, C#, then we get DLL files in a form of an API. And if we are talking about Selenium, Selenium is one of the same thing. It is one of the Java project only. It's not a tool. It's one of the Java project, which the company with the name, which company came up with Selenium? So ThoughtWorks is the one who came up with Selenium. They are the very first one who designed Selenium. So Jason Huggins was the developer who designed Selenium. Now the main website of Selenium, it's seleniumhu.org. This is the main website of Selenium. The very first thing about Selenium, what is Selenium? Selenium automates browsers, that's it. Selenium is only for web-based testing. Anything and everything available on a web page can be easily automated using Selenium, but no desktop-based application. For desktop-based application, there are other tools in the market, like QTP is there, right? But if we compare QTP with Selenium, then we have seen these days that most of the companies are leaving QTP behind and moving towards Selenium. What are the reasons behind it? Okay, I got some questions.
Because it's open source?
Yeah, I mean, yes. One of the things that Selenium is completely open source, right? So, but that is not the only reason why companies are moving towards Selenium. There are other open source tools in the market. There are millions of open source tools in the market. Why Selenium is very popular? So let's
because it's
yeah.
more Java based kind of, you know, initially it supports primarily Java. So most of the applications were designed in Java, so they were started using Selenium, and then gradually developed to this tool can be used by Python, Ruby, and C#, and all those. It supports all those languages. I assume that.
Okay, the very first thing.
Platform independent.
Sorry.
It's platform independent. That might be reason.
Exactly. Yeah, yes, these are all the reasons. I'll be talking about all these things in detail. So the very first thing, it doesn't mean that my application is designed in Java. Then only I'll be using Selenium. That is the only reason Selenium was very popular. Selenium is not at all dependent on in which language your application is designed, right? Although it supports almost every language, but let's say if my website is designed in PHP, then I will not be learning PHP to automate it. If my website is designed in C#, then I'll not be learning C# to automate it. It doesn't mean that. We only need to know one language in order to automate any website built in any language. If we talk about QTP, initial support of QTP is only on VBScript, right? QTP supports VBScript majorly, right? If we talk about VBScript, which operating system VBScript supports? VBScript supports Windows, right? It only supports Windows only, right? It will not gonna work on Mac. It will not work on Linux. It will not work on Solaris and other operating system because VBScript is majorly supported on Windows. If we are talking about Selenium, what all languages Selenium support? It supports Java. It supports C#. It supports Ruby. It supports Python. It supports PHP. It supports some part of JavaScript, right? C#, Ruby, Python. Any other language that I'm missing over here? So these are actually the major languages that Selenium supports, right? And if you specifically talk about Java, which operating system Java supports? Or rather, I should say, is there any operating system which does not support Java? There is no operating system in the world that does not support Java. When you if you have ever installed Java, the very first message that you get is 3 billion devices supports Java. It means devices like operating systems like Windows, Mac, Linux, and Solaris, then Android, iOS. All the major operating system in the world supports Java. And if you are writing your Selenium code in Java, then you can execute that code in almost every operating system that supports Java. So this is one of the best features with Selenium, and it is completely open source, whereas QTP only supports Windows. It's true that the license of QTP is very costly. Per user license somewhere around 2,000 to 4,000 USD. Somewhere like if a company is going for a concurrent license as well for 50 users, it will gonna cost very expensive. Whereas the same functionality Selenium is providing free of cost, except the desktop-based testing. Selenium does not support desktop-based testing, right? So, and if you talk about desktop-based application, I think there are only 15% of the companies who are completely on the desktop-based application. Almost 75% of the market is web-based because it's a time of cloud computing, and most of the applications are opened via URL itself. That is one of the reasons why Selenium is popular, right? Because it has a very good support on web-based application testing, right? And then we talk about browsers. QTP initially it had a major support on IE only, right? Then there were other add-ins for other browser support as well. But Selenium has a very good support on all major browsers. Browsers like IE, like Chrome, like Firefox, Opera, Safari, all the major browsers in the world are supported by Selenium. So multiple browser support is there, multiple OS support is there, multiple language support is there, and these are the actual languages that it supports. Whereas like QTP, it supports only the scripting language. So this is a scripting language which is not purely object oriented. And Java is one of the powerful language. You can do anything in Java. The things that you can do in Java, you can do the same thing with Selenium as well. So there are no boundaries in Selenium. Let's say in QTP, we are restricted to that particular tool. If there is a functionality in that tool, that functionality we can easily access and implement it. If we come with out of the boundary logics, and if we want to implement that functionality, and if QTP does not support that, then we are restricted. But in Selenium, there is no as such restriction, because Selenium itself is not a tool. It's just a collection of Java methods and Java classes. So anything that is doable in Java, we can implement that thing with Selenium. So that is one of the major advantage of using Selenium. Right now, let's come back to the main website of Selenium. There is one documentation part. It is very important that everyone should be knowing the brief history of the Selenium project, right? So today's session is majorly focused on the theoretical part, right? From our next session, we'll not be talking about any theory. We'll be practically doing all the coding and designing, framework designing stuff. Just for today, it's very important to know the brief history of this project, right? So I'll click on this, and you can see over here. Initially, Selenium came into the life in 2004 by a developer, Jason Huggins, right? He was an internal developer at ThoughtWorks. Now, in order to automate his daily routine tasks, he has created a very small Java library with some methods that can automate some of the browser stuff. That library went up to such an extent that they thought of giving it some name, and they came up with a name called Selenium. Now, why only Selenium? There is a history behind that as well. If you talk about QTP, in 2004, QTP was a product of Mercury. Now it has been taken over by HP, but initially it was a product of Mercury. Now, in general terms, if I talk about Mercury, what is Mercury? Mercury is actually an element, right? If someone intakes mercury, then he'll die, right? So if someone intakes mercury, then we give him an antidote that is called as selenium. So selenium is basically an antidote to mercury. It kills mercury. That is the reason they have given the name of this project as Selenium, so to end the market of QTP mercury. And up to such an extent, they are successful as well. Now, most of the companies, you may see that they are moving towards Selenium and leaving QTP behind. And cost is not the only factor. There are many other reasons behind it, why Selenium is so much popular, right? So, initial component they launched is Selenium RC and Selenium IDE. So RC is remote control. We call it as a remote control as well. And IDE is one of the very small plugin on Firefox that generally people use for record and play. Like every automation tool has a record and play feature, they came up with a plugin called Selenium IDE. It's something like this. Let me show it to you. I believe everyone must have seen Selenium IDE, how it looks. So this is a plugin, Selenium IDE. If you open, this plugin is only on Firefox. It means that it will only going to support Firefox. It will not going to work on IE, not going to work on Chrome, right? So what you'll do if you go to any website, let's say I go to google.com, I type Selenium, I'll click on this link. Whatever actions that I have performed on the web, if you see it on IDE, each and every action is being recorded. Now if you want to play back, you click on this, else you can click one by one on these commands and it will perform the same action again. So it is mostly used for record and play. You can do some editing in the scripts as well, but if a person is actually working on Selenium in real projects, he'll never use Selenium IDE. Some people still use it to locate elements, but there are many other ways available. I would really recommend that don't use Selenium IDE, don't be dependent on record and play, because the coding part of Selenium is very easy. It is actually not complex, right? So coding part of Selenium is very powerful as compared to any other automation tool. The record and play of Selenium IDE is not at all powerful. Companies are not at all using Selenium IDE. It's only for the beginners who start with Selenium. The very first thing they do is they download IDE and start playing with some record and play, right? But we will not be using Selenium IDE because there are reasons behind it. First, we have seen that it only supports Firefox. The second one is that you cannot create frameworks in Selenium IDE. You cannot handle large websites, complex logics in Selenium IDE. Ultimately, you have to switch to the coding part. So it's better that we should directly start from the coding part, and we should not focus on any record and play. Right. The coding part they came up with is Selenium RC. So Selenium RC is one of the Java library. Since like I'm saying that it's a Java project, so what they have done, they have created a class, one of the major class they have created, and given that class name as default Selenium. This is one of the class they have created in case of Selenium RC, right? And then they have created some methods that you can call and you can automate your website. Now methods like, let's say there's a method called start. They have written a code inside this method that whenever you call this method, it will actually going to launch a browser, right? So that code they have written inside the start method. They have written a method called open, and inside this method they have given an argument called URL. So the code that they have written, the Java, it was basically a core Java code itself. There is no advanced Java in Selenium. So the code they have written is that whenever you call this open method, you need to give your URL, let's say http facebook.com, and whenever you execute this code, it will actually navigate to facebook.com. Same way, they have created other methods like click. Let's say you need to click on any element. Let's say you want to click on this link, or let's say this button, this tab, these tabs, or let's say this image. Anywhere you want to click on this page, you actually need to locate that particular element on the page. Now, if any one of you have worked on QTP, you must be aware of one of the feature of QTP, that is object spy. So object spy is one of the component that if we take that object spy to any element on this page, it actually shows the property of that element, unique properties of that element. It could be any HTML property, it could be ID, it could be name, it could be type, it could be text, any unique property through which we can uniquely locate this element on a web page. But Selenium is not a tool, so Selenium does not provide any such thing. But there are other plugins available in the market. Plugins like something called as Firebug Firepath. Over here you can see a bug sign over here. If I click on this, it will going to launch something like this. This is what Firebug and Firepath. Now how we can get this, I'll first show you how you can download it. This is a plugin to Firefox. So just go to Google and type download Firebug. Very first thing, you would be downloading Firebug, then you would be downloading Firepath, because Firebug is an add-on to Firefox and Firepath is an add-on to Firebug. So go over here, you'll see add to Firefox on this page, right? Just click on this. Within few seconds, your Firebug will be added to Firefox. Once you are done with this, just type fire path over here and select fire path from this menu. Same process, add to Firefox. Within few seconds it will be added. Once it is added, it will restart the browser and you'll get this option of Firebug over here. So once you open Firebug, it will gonna look like this. Now this is the inspect element pointer. If you click on this, wherever you take your mouse on the page, you can see all the elements are being highlighted. If I click on this tab, I'll get something over here. This is what we call as locator. There are many locators available in Selenium. Initially, when Selenium RC came into the picture, there were only 4 major locators. One is ID, one is name, something we called as XPATHS, which is very frequently used in Selenium, something called as CSS. This is again very frequently used in Selenium. These were the 4 major locators at the time of Selenium RC. Now we have many other locators in the picture as well. Locators like tag name, locators like class name, locators like link text, locators like partial link text. These are some of the locators through which we can uniquely locate elements on a web page, right? And if you see over here, this is what an XPath, this is what an XPath is. XPath is nothing, it's been generated with the HTML property of this element. If you take a look at this particular tab inside the HTML, like inside the fire path, you will see the HTML of this particular element, right? So this XPath is being generated with the ID of this element. ID is menu projects and then \A. That is the hyperlink. So I'll be discussing about all this locator in depth, how these locators are being created. What you need to do initially, just copy this locator and you need to give this locator to the click method. So this argument accepts the locator, whatever method that they have created. You just need to give this to the click method, and when you run the code, it will go to that particular website and it will click on that particular element, because this is a unique locator of that particular element. Same way, they have created a method called type. Now if you want to type on any search box, let's say this is a search box. This is a search box. You need to type on the search box. First of all, you will be locating this search box uniquely on this web page. Again, you take this mouse over here, inspect element, and you'll see you get something like this. This is a unique locator for this search box. So this type argument, it accepts first your locator, and the second thing it accepts is value. So in locator, you're gonna give the XPath of this element, that is this. If it is string, then you need to give it in double quotes. Then the value is what you need to type. Let's say I need to type Selenium. I'll give this value over here. And when I run this, it will directly gonna type on that particular search box. So this is how they have created the entire list of methods, and they have kept all the methods inside one class. And they have named that class as default Selenium. And once they are done with the entire project, what they have done, they have generated a jar file out of that project, and they have uploaded that jar file over here. If you go to downloads in seleniumhq.org, if you go to this downloads tab, you will see download version 2. This is the current version of Selenium 2.45. Initially when they came up, the version was somewhere around 1. Something, right? When Selenium, the initial Selenium RC, the initial Selenium 1.0 was launched. So once you click on this, you'll get something like this. I've already downloaded it. You'll get a jar, something like this. This is what I got. And you can see different versions. Whenever they do any updation, like in In Jan 2012, it was 2.16. Then you can see very frequent changes. Whenever they add some code to their project, whenever they implement new functionality, whenever they make any bug fixes, they launch a new version and they update it over here. And they just update the build version. So 2 is the release version and .44.45 is the build version. Right now, this is what your Selenium is. Now it's nothing like I double click on it and it will install Selenium on my machine. It contains only the classes, the methods that they have actually implemented inside their Java project, and we are just referring to their Java project. We are not installing Selenium. We are just referring one of the Java projects that was initially created by ThoughtWorks when we used to work on Selenium RC. Right. If you want to see what all classes are there inside this jar file, just go back to the same website, Selenium HQ, from where you have downloaded this file. Go downwards and you will find something like a link that says Java document. So this is the link that you should be clicking. Just click on this link and it will gonna take you to the API document, the Java document. Here you're gonna find the list of all the classes. Now these classes were not there at the time of the initial Selenium version, Selenium RC. There was one major class that they've implemented that we just discussed about, and that is default Selenium. So this is the default Selenium class that was implemented by thoughtworks.com. So initially, whatever that I've highlighted over here, this is basically a package name, right? This is the company standard, how we write a package name. Package name is always written in reverse order. ThoughtWorks is the company, .com, and then Selenium is the project. Thoughtworks.com, then Selenium. This is how the packages are being created, right? Now within this class, if I go downwards, you'll see something that is method summary. So these are all list of methods. These are all list of methods that were implemented in case of Selenium RC. So one of the methods that I was talking about, click. See, this is the click method. Although it is deprecated now because Selenium RC is soon going to be end from the market. I mean, they're soon going to wind up this API, Selenium RC, because it is no company is using Selenium RC. They are actually working on the latest version of Selenium. I'll be talking about that soon, right? So click method accepts locator. If you give the locator, it will click on that particular link, button, checkbox, or a radio button. Same way, there are other methods as well, like double click is there, drag and drop is there, and a method called let's say get title. If you call this method, it will actually gonna print the title of the current page, right? There are methods like select the drop down list, and method like start. If you call this method, it will actually launch a browser with a new Selenium session. Method like type, it accepts your locator, it accepts value, right? So like you typed in an input field. So these are some of the methods that they have created, and these were the only methods that they have created in order to automate any website, right? So Selenium RC was completely dependent on its method. If there is a method, then you can implement that functionality. If the method is not implemented, then you cannot implement that functionality, because our imagination, our test case could go beyond what all methods are there, right? We can think any sort of test case, any sort of scenario we can think about, and if the method is not present, then we cannot automate that thing. So Selenium RC was completely dependent on the methods, right? Now when they have published this API, many companies have started using it. They downloaded the jar files, they created many Java projects, they created many frameworks, but after a certain amount of time, they started facing challenges. Challenges while using Selenium RC. Now, what sort of challenge? Now, when I say that this is a class and these are the methods, in order to call these methods, I just need to create an object of a class. I'll be creating an object of default Selenium class by saying default Selenium ABC or some meaningful name equal to new default Selenium. That is how I create an object. And then I can say selenium.start, the very first method, selenium.start. When I run this code, it will actually going to launch a browser. But it will not launch the browser before or until I start something that is called as Selenium server. In Selenium RC, there was one Selenium server. If I again go back to Selenium HQ to downloads, you'll see that over here it's mentioned that Selenium server, formerly the Selenium RC server. Now, what this server is and why it was required. Now, in order to perform communication with browser, see, this is only a piece of Java code. How will it communicate to a browser? What is written inside the architecture? In the architecture, they have mentioned that how Selenium RC communicate with the browser, it injects JavaScript on the browser. It throws JavaScript in order to inspect these elements on the page. In order to perform a communication with the browser, Selenium RC injects JavaScript. That is how the architecture was designed in case of RC. Now, if I talk about one of the browser, a browser called IE, you may have noticed over here, you may have noticed some yellow triangle sort of thing over here in IE, specific to IE. You might not have seen this thing in any other browser, not in Firefox, not in Chrome, but you might have seen this yellow triangle on some websites. When you navigate, you get a yellow triangle. Now, what is this yellow triangle? This is nothing but just a JavaScript alert, a JavaScript error. Why this is there? Because IE is a highly secured browser. IE does not allow any third-party JavaScript to be executed onto its browser. On the other end, how Selenium RC works, it injects JavaScript. So whenever you execute your Selenium RC code on IE, it will block that execution. Now, on the other end, Selenium guys says that they support all major browsers, they support IE as well. Then how they support IE? There are many websites, many initial websites, they used to work only on IE. They are not supported on Chrome. There are many old client applications that does not support Chrome or does not support Firefox. It only works on IE. Then what if IE blocks the execution of RC? How are we going to execute that code? So what they have came up with a workaround was that you go to this settings option on IE, internet options, go to the security tab, and you need to remove all these enable protected modes. It means that you are removing the entire security from your browser, from IE. Once you remove all these enable protected modes, all the security will be removed from IE, and then you should be able to inject JavaScript. You should be able to execute your Selenium RC code on the IE browser. But what happens? There are some websites that works on HTTPS and has some SSL certificates. If you remove this, remove the security, you will start getting these sort of errors. You may have seen these errors. If the security is missing, then how your website will gonna open. And if your website will not open, what will you automate? So these were some of the challenges that were faced in Selenium RC. Not only this, the library was very small. It was completely dependent on the methods that they have created. And methods are always limited, right? So all these challenges were actually realized by one person whose name is Simon Stewart. So Simon Stewart is the one in 2006 he used to work with Google, and there he designed another Java project with the name Webdriver. So Webdriver was another Java project. Selenium RC was one of the Java projects started at ThoughtWorks, and Webdriver was started at Google. Right? Now this time as well, Google is a very heavy user of Selenium Webdriver. They're all internal application, all the web-based applications are being tested through Webdriver itself. Right? So Simon Stewart has actually realized all the challenges that were faced in RC, and he has actually overcome all these challenges in the Webdriver project. Now how he has actually overcome all these challenges? The major challenge was the JavaScript injection. And he has completely removed the JavaScript injection from the architecture. He has completely removed the JavaScript injection. Now if the JavaScript injection is removed, how the code will gonna interact with the browser? What he has done, in RC we have seen there was one major class only, that was default Selenium, and all the methods were there inside this class only that we use to automate our website. In Webdriver, what he has done, for every browser he has created a separate class. If you want to work on Firefox, there is a class called Firefox Driver. If you want to work on Chrome, there is a class called Chrome Driver. If you want to work on IE, he has created a separate class called Internet Explorer Driver. Even to support Android and iPhone, he has created these two classes. But for Android and iPhone, the support was only for the web apps. You can only test your website on their browsers. You cannot test any native or hybrid app. This was the support up till Selenium. This was the support up till Webdriver was there. Right? Now how they are interacting with the browser, what they have done, they have made a tie-up with all these vendors. Now the vendor who has actually created Firefox, now Firefox is a browser. It must be created in some language, right? There must be some native class of this Firefox driver. There must be some method, some functionality, some API. Now they have contacted the vendor of Firefox and they have taken the APIs from that vendor. Same thing they have done with Chrome, with Internet Explorer. All the major projects work in the same way. They shared their APIs and they perform the communication between their projects using their APIs, right? So these vendors have shared their APIs, and what Simon Stewart he has done, he has created these classes, and these classes are directly interacting with the native class of their APIs. Firefox driver is directly interacting with the native class of Firefox browser. Same thing Chrome is doing, same thing Internet Explorer is doing, and same thing other browsers are doing. Now there is no more JavaScript injection. In Selenium RC, there was JavaScript injection. In order to execute our code, we need to start something called a Selenium server. And in case of Webdriver, there is no JavaScript injection, so there is no need of server. You can directly write your code and you can directly execute it. Now I'll show you how we can execute it. Let's say I want to work on the Webdriver project. The code is already written. I already have the API. I already have a jar file. If I create a new Java project, let's say I give it a name as Selenium Testing. I'll click on Finish. Right. Now I just said that there is a class. I'll just name it as Testing. And I want to automate my website on Firefox. Now what Simon Stewart has done, he has created a class with the name Firefox Driver. Now if I write Firefox Driver, I'll create a reference variable. I'll name it as driver equal to new Firefox driver. But it is actually throwing me error. Why it is throwing me error? How would Eclipse know that what is Firefox driver? See, Eclipse gives you suggestions. If you mouse over onto this, Eclipse is saying that Firefox cannot be resolved to a type. Eclipse is not able to understand what Firefox driver is. It is actually implemented as a class in someone else's project. In Simon Stewart's project, in Webdriver project, Firefox driver class was there. How would I tell Eclipse that this is a class? It is asking me to create a class. The class is already created. So what I'll do, the jar file that I have downloaded, I'll right click over here. I'll go to build path, go to add external archives, and I'll go to folder where I have downloaded that jar file, the Selenium jar file. This is one of the jar file. I'll not be using 2.45. I'll be using 2.44, right? Because in 2.45 there are other things in Selenium RC which are completely deprecated. Although I'll not be taking any example on RC. I'll be taking all the examples on WebDriver because RC is no more there in the market, right? So I'll click on open, and still I'm getting some errors. Why I'm getting some errors? Because I have not added some header statements. Like if you are using any functionality in C++ or C, you may include headers like include conio.h, studio.h, right? Here as well, you need to import the package where this class is there. So package as in, let's take a look at this class. In this API document, you'll find this class over here. You'll search for Firefox driver, and this is the Firefox driver class. If I open it, you'll see that org.openqa.selenium.firefox. So this is the community which owns the WebDriver project initially, right? And this is the package name that they have given. So if you go over here, you'll write import this dot star, something like this, and then you can see all the errors are gone. But do you really need to remember all these things? Do you really need to remember the package name? You might be using n number of classes. You need not to remember these names. You just mouse over onto this class and you'll get a statement called import. Initially we were not getting it when the jar file was not there. Now we are getting it. I just click on this and you can see that it is automatically added to your project. That's it. So you've created an object of this class. Now let's run it and see what happens. See, as soon as I run it, it has launched a browser. See, I have not started any server, I have not started anything, I have not configured anything. Just I have imported the jar file, I have created an object of Firefox driver class, and it has actually launched a browser. If I want to navigate to some website, I'll directly say driver.get, and it is asking me for a URL. I'll give the URL http google.com. I'll just save this, run this again, and see, it opens a browser and navigates to google.com. So this is how simple the configuration is. There is no setup required for Selenium. You need not to install huge software. It's just, you can see the size of this jar file is just in like 33.6 MB. That is what the jar file is. So you need not to have a big configuration to work on Selenium. Right, and not only this, he has created a huge collection of classes. All these classes that you see over here in the Java document, all these classes are somewhere related to WebDriver. And in RC, the library was very small. Right? So later on, both projects, RC and WebDriver, got merged. That is the reason we called WebDriver as Selenium Webdriver, or the current version, that is Selenium 2.0, and 4.5 is the build version. So that is the reason we call WebDriver as Selenium 2, which is the current version of Selenium. And very soon they are planning for Selenium 3.0. which the APIs they have already introduced to the market, and you people may have started working on it. The APIs that is Selendroid, Appium, iOS driver, right? You might have seen my video tutorials on the same, right? So if you search for Selenium 3.0 over here, you'll see a roadmap to Selenium 3, right? See, Selenium 2 was officially released in July 2011. So almost 4 years, right? And now they're planning for Selenium 3. Although they were planning for Selenium 3 Christmas last year, it was not actually last year, it was actually last to last year. They were planning for Selenium 3. But they have not officially introduced it, right? But there are some companies, Appium, iOS, Selendroid, these are the part of different organizations, and they are actually going to club these projects with Selenium 3.0. If I open Selendroid, then you'll see that Selendroid is Selenium for Android. You can automate native, hybrid, and web app of a mobile device using Selendroid. Same way, if you talk about Appium, Selendroid only supports Android, right? But Selendroid, let me go back to the Selendroid link, but it is not yet officially launched in the market. If I again go back to the website of Selendroid, if you see over here, the current Selendroid version is 0.15. It is not yet launched in the market. Although the API is there for testing, you can download it, you can perform testing. But this product is not completely launched in the market. There are many issues so far in Selendroid. So what to do? What if I want to test my Android applications? Appium is a solution for that. Appium is already launched in the market. If I go to Appium and if I mouse over to this download Appium, you can see in the status bar it is showing the version as 1.34.1. So it is already launched in the market. Companies are already using Appium. It was launched on 3rd May 2014 was the launch date of Appium, right? And it is actually sponsored by Sauce Labs. So people are actually using Appium for testing Android and iOS app. It supports both iOS and Android. iOS is only supported on Mac because iOS, iPhone, iPads, these are the Apple products, and Apple has a monopoly. These products are only supported on Mac. But Android, you can work on Mac, you can work on Linux, you can work on Windows, you can test Android on all these operating systems, right? So to perform complete mobile application testing, now Selenium will not only be restricted for web-based testing, but you can automate your complete mobile applications as well through Appium, through Selendroid, using all native, hybrid, and mobile apps. Initially, there were other tools like Robotium, you might have heard about. Calabash was there, Perfecto is there. Perfecto is one of the paid tools. But all these tools are not very much customized. If we talk about Appium, it supports a lot of features which you will not find in other tools. Even like if you want to automate any app, if you don't have the code for the app present on your machine, if you don't even have the app present on your machine, if the app is already installed on your device, let's say I talk about a dialer app in an Android phone, you can even automate that dialer app. Now dialer is an Android internal application. You don't have a code for that app, but still you can automate it. So that is how powerful Appium is. So we'll be talking about a lot of these things as well, right? So initially we have seen these components. Initially it was Selenium IDE RC Webdriver, and the last component is Grid in Selenium 2.0, right? It's Grid 2. 1.0 came with Grid 1, 2.0 came up with Grid 2. Now what is Grid? Grid is actually used for parallel execution of test case onto multiple machines and multiple devices, parallel or sequential execution. Let's say you want to perform browser compatibility testing manually. You want to test your website on multiple browsers. So how will you test it manually? You might assign 8 to 10 resources, and you will ask them, one should test on IE, one should test on Firefox, one should test on Chrome, one should test on Mac, one should test on Linux, and you need to make sure all test cases are executed and everything should be working fine on all these operating system and all these browsers. So all the people will be manually testing it. They'll be spending the whole day or 2 days in order to test that particular, to perform the entire browser compatibility testing. Now Grid itself can do alone all these tasks. So what you will be doing in case you're working with Grid, so you will be creating something like this. Let me change the color of pen. So you will be having some machines like this is your main machine. Let's say it's a Windows machine. You'll create it as a hub, right? Then you'll have other machines connected. One is Linux, one is Mac, again the other one is Windows, right? Now this machine have Firefox, this machine has Chrome, this machine has IE, right? And you have 500 test cases to execute. Now you will connect these, you will make these machines as node, and you will make one machine as hub. So this will be your hub, and all the nodes will be connected to your hub. When you execute your code, your 500 test cases from the hub, it will be distributed parallelly on all these machines for the parallel execution. Some will run on Chrome, some will run on Firefox, some will run on IE, some will run on Mac, some will run on Windows, some will run on Linux. And at the same time, the execution will happen. And there is no manual interference. The entire process will be automated. So only one single resource, not even the physical resource, can perform the entire browser compatibility testing. And this is one of the unique features which is not there in any other automation tool, even not there in QTP, because QTP majorly supports Windows only. So these are the things that make Selenium very powerful. Even if you're talking about Appium, Selendroid, all these APIs are completely open source. We need not to pay even a single penny to work on these APIs. Right? So that is what Selenium is. Everything that comes with Selenium is completely open source. You need not to pay even a single penny, except the training that you have already paid for it, right? Rest everything is open source. Any doubts, any confusion so far? Anything that you're not able to understand? So we have just seen how we can invoke Firefox. If you want to invoke IE and if you want to invoke Chrome, then you would be calling those classes respectively. Let's say if you want to work on IE, there is a class called Internet Explorer Driver, and same thing, you will be creating an object of this class. That's all that you need to do. Now there is one more configuration that is required. This is one-time configuration that you require to support like the browser IE and Chrome, because these are the third-party browser. Initial support was there on Firefox only. Now what they have done, they have actually created some executable files. If you go back to Selenium HQ and the download section, and if you go downwards over here, you see something that is Internet Explorer Driver Server, right? So this is one file. If you want to work on IE, 32-bit or 64-bit, based on your OS, you need to download it, right? So once you download it, like this is what you need to do for IE, and same thing you need to do it for Chrome. If you go downwards, you will find third-party drivers, third-party browser drivers, right? This is Chrome 2.14, and if I open this again, you're gonna see some zip file over here. You for Linux, for Mac, for Windows. Because IE is only supported on Windows, it does not work on Mac. So there was only Windows supported files, but Chrome is supported on these operating systems. For Windows, you need to download this, right? Once you download it, you're gonna see something like this: C drive software. I've already downloaded it. This is for IE, and this is for Chrome. Now there is only one configuration that you would be needing. Just copy the path where you have kept these files and go back to the system environment variables again. Type edit over here, open this environment variables, and Srinivas, we need the APK to automate mobile app. If you have the APK already installed in your device, you can still automate it. You do not need the APK. This is only the case with Android, but iOS won't allow you. For iOS, you should be having the iOS project with you, the .app file. If you're working on real device, then you need to have the Xcode project. I'll be talking about those things, because that is a monopoly of Apple. They does not allow anyone to do anything on their real devices. You need to purchase some developer ID as well in case of Apple, right? So let us come back to our topic. We are actually configuring environment variables. So I'll go over here. I'll go to the path variable, and at the very end, I'll add this path: C drive softwares, IE driver server.ext. Then I'll add a semicolon. I'll add for the Chrome driver.ext. So this is the only thing that you need to do, and it's only a one-time configuration. Once you are done with this and you go back to your code, you have written a code for IE, just hit the run button and it will launch Internet Explorer and it will navigate to google.com. For IE, you need to make sure some things that the zoom level of IE should be 100%. You can see a zoom level over here. If I change it to 125% or sometime it is less than that, let's say I change it to 125% and I run this code again, so it might throw errors sometime. Let's see. See, it didn't navigate it to google.com, and if I see my code, you can see there are errors. The error says that unexpected error launching Internet Explorer, browser level zoom level was set to 125. Rather, it should be 100, right? So you need to make sure the browser level is actually 100. So I'll again change it back to 100, right? And then when I execute the code, it should work absolutely fine. All right, and same thing you should be doing it for Chrome. Just change the class to Chrome driver and it will invoke the Chrome driver, right? So just try all these things and just try do the initial setup on your machine, right? I want that everyone should be at the same place, right? So that next time when we meet, we will not be talking about these configuration, but all things that you would be needing. If anyone already have all these things installed, then you can just follow the recordings, and we'll soon gonna come with we'll soon gonna discuss about the advanced topics on WebDriver, right? We'll start with the very basic things, how we can locate elements and work with elements, because our focus should be that we should be able to handle each and every element on a web page, like text box, links, checkboxes, radio buttons, mouse overs, drag and drop. If you are able to add all these topics, if you are able to, if you are able to automate all these elements, then we can automate any web-based application. And that is our focus should be, right?
Hi, Rahul.
Yeah.
Hi, Rahul. Just to interrupt you. So, should we install Selenium 2.44 or should we install from 2.0 to 2.45?
2.45.
2.45?
Yes. The latest one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just listing out the things. We need JDK 1.7. We need Eclipse.
I just put it down again.
Okay.
You need JDK 1.7. You need Eclipse. You need Selenium jars, right? That is 2.45, the latest one you can download. And with JDK, you need to configure the environment variables, right? So I'll be sharing our today's session video with you very soon. Once I'll process it, I'm gonna upload it and then I'm gonna share it with you. Yes, Selenium works with every operating system that supports Java. Windows 8.1 supports Java, so Selenium will gonna work on it. Right. So next week we're gonna discuss about WebDriver more. Right. We're gonna see how we can automate lots of elements on the website. So next will be more interactive session, more on the coding part. Right. So theory and the history of Selenium was up till this session only, right? So that's all for the day, and I hope you have really enjoyed the session. If you have any questions, you can ask it right now, and I'll be able to answer your questions.
Yeah, hi Raman, I just want to know, like, for Selenium 2.45, means which Mozilla Firefox browser version it is supporting?
The latest one will be supported on 2.45.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let me unmute you, Anshul. Yeah. Yes, Anshul. Do you have any queries?
Yeah, actually, with these JDK 1.7, we need to install Java also, or
I mean, JDK is Java itself. JDK is Java Development Kit. Once you install it, you're going to get two folders. One is JDK, one is JRE. Some people, what they do is that they download JRE separately. So you need not to do that. You just download JDK and you're going to get these two things.
okay, so just download of JDK and
Yes,
edit the system variable and put in the path.
exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else, guys? All right. So thanks a lot, guys, and thanks a lot for joining in, and thanks a lot for your patience. So we're gonna meet next weekend, and I'm gonna forward you the new meeting invite, right? So you'll be registering and joining on the same meeting invite. All right. So I'll be soon forwarding you the code that we've written today and the video for this session. I'll be forwarding it. All right. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.